shall we begin?
Let the games begin.
All right.
A new age has begun. An age of freedom.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
Get to the chopper!
This is going to be quite a ride.
And hello, everybody, and welcome to the Movie Pit Podcast. I am your host, Christian Renteria. This is the Movie Pit Podcast, where we talk about all of the latest breaking movie news items that came out this week, the movie trailers that came out this week, and the movies that are out in streaming and in theaters for all your viewing pleasures. I almost forgot my own intro. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the podcast this week. Kind of a slow week this week. We have some pretty big news, and surprisingly, read that very sarcastically, it comes from Warner Brothers Discovery. The continuing fallout of everything that happened last week is been carried over this week. I mentioned last week that this was not just going to go away. This wasn't going to be something that just came and went. It was going to be a continuing thing that we were going to be talking about for weeks, months, maybe even the rest of the year, and that is the case. So before we get to all that, obviously we want to get to everything else. I have a very, very quick trailer talk segment to get to, so let's get to it.
Coming soon to theaters.
So very quickly, we have just a handful of trailers that came out this week. There was a trailer for the Netflix film Do Revenge with Maya Hawke in there. So the movie is about these two girls who go to I'm pretty sure it's a private school, an elite private school, and they both want to do, obviously, as the title says, do revenge, even though it's not proper grammar, to people that have wronged them. And instead of doing it to the person that actually did it to them, they decide to do the revenge for each other. So, Maya Hawke's character is a character that was, she got a rumor spread about her by this other girl. But the other girl that's helping Maya Hawke's character is Camila Mendes. That was the name I was thinking about. Camila Mendes. She plays. She's in Riverdale. What did I say she played? She plays Veronica. I almost said Betty. No, she plays Veronica on Riverdale. I never watched Riverdale, but I know she's on the show, and she plays Veronica. So her character, Mendes' character, deals with a boyfriend, or now an ex-boyfriend, who leaked their sex tape to the school and kind of made her public enemy number one, I guess. So Maya Hawke's so the plan is, in the trailer, it shows that the two get together eventually. They're not really friends, so they just kind of have this chance encounter in the parking lot. And Mendes' character is going to take revenge on Maya Hawke's bully, and Maya Hawke's going to take revenge on the ex-boyfriend. So there's that. I mean, it looks okay. It looks fine. I think, as obviously going to ride off the success of Maya Hawke and Camila Mendes, both of them being in the movie, because I don't think anybody else really famous is in there. So it's just them two. Obviously, Maya Hawke already has the Netflix crowd with Stranger Things, and Camila Mendes, has the young teen crowd, of course, that watch Riverdale. So there you go. I forgot to put down the release date for it, but it's coming out very soon, because Netflix obviously puts out some trailers for their movies that are coming out very soon. So I'll obviously talk about that once we get to that release date. The next quick trailer is for Prime Video. They released the first trailer for Catherine, called Birdy. This movie is written and directed by Lena Dunham and stars Bella Ramsey, aka Lyanna Mormont from Game of Thrones, in case you need a character to the name, who plays Catherine, aka Birdy, a cunning young teenager who does her best to ward off wealthy suitors her father will like her to marry, so they can also make some money in the end. This movie is based off a novel by Karen Cushman, played by the titled by the same thing, Catherine, called Birdy. This will have a limited theater run on September 23rd before arriving on Prime Video on October 7th. This looks okay. I've never really seen anything that Lena Dunham has had. I never watched Girls, so I don't really have any grasp on how Dunham, writes her characters or stuff like that. I've seen obviously commercials and stuff for Girls, and I've read stuff that Girls is a good show and stuff like that. But then there's obviously the online hate for Lena Dunham in general, and some of the stuff that she said and has said in the past. So I don't know how that's going to work out here, but the movie itself, it looks fine. It looks it has that old century medieval feel to it, but obviously kind of using kind of a very modern style of its storytelling and its language and stuff like that. So stuff that we've seen in the past, in the past with other movies. Definitely get kind of like this weird amalgamation of like Little Woman and Lady Bird and like just other kind of character, other kind of movies like this. So yeah, I don't know, but I think it's going to premiere at the Toronto International Film Festival soon. Going to be making the film festival circuit soon as well, since those are all going to start up very soon. So we'll probably we'll hear some reviews and stuff and thoughts from that movie once we get closer to the release date. So obviously I'll keep an eye on that. There was a very brief teaser trailer for Luca Guadagnino's newest film. I always mispronounce the last name. The director of Call Me by Your Name and the Suspiria remake. He has a new film called Bones and All. There was a very, very brief teaser, like literally 30-second teaser that came out for the movie. The movie stars Timothée Chalamet and Taylor Russell from the Escape Room movies. That's where she's from. I think that's most people probably know her from. As, quote, two outsiders who embark on a 1,000-mile odyssey through Ronald Reagan's America. When they discover they cannot outrun their terrifying pasts, and the pair take a final stand to determine whether their love can survive their otherness. There is a twist to this movie that I will not spoil unless you do, your own research. Then that will get spoiled. But the movie is based rather off a novel of the same name by Camille DeAngelis. I think that's how you, or Angelis. DeAngelis. If you want to go check that out, Bones and All. That's the name of the book and the movie. Well, that's the name of the movie. I don't know if that's the name of the book. I think that's the name of the novel as well. Forgot to write that down. I apologize. But the film co-stars Mark Rylance, Andre Holland, Michael Stronberg, who was also in Call Me by Your Name, David Gordon Green, of all people. I don't know who he plays in the movie, but he's in there, and Chloe Sevigny is also in there. The movie will come out in November, although there's no actual release date. It just says November. So, if they're maybe going to give this an awards push, we're probably looking at late November, maybe early December, like really, really late November, maybe early December kind of thing, like a limited release November and then like a wide release December probably. But that's Bones and All. I know what the twist is. The teaser, again, very short, 30 seconds. You kind of get the idea that something's going on. But I know what the twist is, or twist, quote unquote twist is. So yeah, it's there's nothing that gives it away in the trailers whatsoever. So I don't know. We'll see how that works out. But hopefully we'll get a full on trailer, and who knows if they'll show that off in a trailer later on. And the last trailer we're going to talk about here is a new trailer for the dark comedy thriller The Menu. We briefly talked about this when it was first announced. The movie stars Anya Taylor-Joy and Nicholas Hoyt as a young couple invited to eat at a very selective restaurant run by a very mysterious chef played by Ralph Fiennes, who it turns out has a very creative way into his cooking. Trailer pretty much gives off the vibe that maybe it's people. Maybe. But yeah, this trailer is kind of interesting. I think this movie definitely is going to be a movie that you kind of just have to accept what's going on and accept kind of the route they're taking, because it's definitely, I've seen like mixed reactions to the trailer online. Some people comparing it to Ready or Not, which it does kind of have that vibe a little bit. But yeah, it's definitely, I think it's going to be one of those movies whether you're in on it or you're not. And if you're not in on it, I think you're not going to enjoy the experience of watching this movie. It kind of feels like one of those movies where it's like you're in, it's like, there's some movies where like you're in on the joke, and if you're not in on the joke, you're just not going to enjoy the movie itself, and you're not going to get most of the movie. I feel like this is one of those movies where like you have to be in on what kind of what they're doing, and if you're not going to enjoy the movie at all. But yeah, there you go. The Menu opens on November 18th. We'll talk more about that obviously once we get closer to the release date, but this looks rather interesting, and I'm gonna go check it out. Yeah, I mean, I like Anya Taylor-Joy, I like Ralph Fiennes, Nicholas Hoyt's okay if given the right project. Looks like John Leguizamo's in there as well, so yeah, why not? Let's do it. All right, so those are your trailers. Like I mentioned, very quick trailer talk. If anything else comes up, obviously I'll put it up down below in the description/show notes area. Let's move on to the movie news items of the week. All right, so let's get to the movie news. It was a rather very light week this week compared to last week, and even with all the Warner Brothers, I feel like everybody is like, you know what, we're gonna let Warner Brothers Discovery dig themselves into a deeper hole and not release anything for a while. Because it was a relatively light week. I mean, we had a lot of release date stuff, and I didn't talk about any. I'm not going to talk about any of the release date stuff just because a lot of it we can talk about, obviously closer to the release date, or projects that don't even have like any actors or writers attached to it yet, or directors. So it's like that project's probably going to move at the end of the day because they don't have anybody attached. So we're just going to wait on those movie news items. If you saw any of those news items, then we're just going to move past those, and obviously I'll talk about those at a later date. I'm not completely ignoring them, but it was a relatively light week this week for movie news. But again, because Warner Bros. Discovery decided to continue to exist and took over the movie news items again. So the movie news cycle rather. But let's talk about some of the other movie news items that came out this week. Another Stephen King novel adaptation is in the works in The Regulators. The novel was published back in 1996 and has a synopsis that reads like this. A peaceful suburban life on Popular Street in Wentworth, Ohio is shattered one day when 4 vans containing shotgun-wielding regulators terrorize the street's residents, cold-bloodedly killing anyone foolish enough to venture outdoors. Masterminding this sudden onslaught is an evil creature who has taken over the body of an autistic boy whose parents were killed in a drive-by shooting several months earlier. I've never read The Regulators. I didn't even know that this was a Stephen King book. I didn't even know this was a book that he had written. So rather interesting. Obviously, Stephen King, his novels have been adapted in Hollywood so many times. Salem's Lot, which was supposed to come out this year, has been delayed to next year. And there's just a bunch of other ones as well that are being worked on or will be coming out soon. So let's add The Regulators to the list. Very briefly, a live-action Pac-Man movie is in the works at Wayfarer Studios and is based on an original story idea by Chuck Williams. He is one of the people behind these new Sonic the Hedgehog movies. So those movies have been pretty good. They're pretty good. They're doing pretty good at the box office. They're pretty good in general. So I think having him behind a live action Pac-Man movie is pretty cool. There's no word on what the Pac-Man movies will be about or how they're envisioning them or anything like that, but it's in the works and it's coming, and I think it's in pretty good hands with Chuck Williams. So there's that, and obviously there's a Sonic Hedgehog 3 coming out. I think that was one of the release dates that they were talking about. I think it's coming out next year, so they're moving pretty fast on that movie, or 2024. I mean, it's coming out. I know it's coming out around Christmas time. I think it's either next year or the following year. So they're doubling down on Sonic. They know they have a good thing in Sonic, and if they can get one of those guys, one of the guys that created and was behind the stories of the Sonic the Hedgehog movies, for a Pac-Man movie, which seems even more impossible to bring to the big screen, more power to them, and fantastic job. Next, Zazie Beetz is in talks to reprise her role from Joker in the sequel Joker Folie, Deux. She played Arthur Fleck's neighbor in the first movie, although how she will return is unknown at the moment, especially considering how her character actually plays out in the actual Joker movie. So I don't know how they're going to bring her back or how she's going to play her factor in the movie, but she's coming back. So there is that. Joaquin Phoenix will return as Arthur Fleck / Joker, along with writer-director Todd Phillips. And last week, it was confirmed that Lady Gaga has joined the movie and she will be playing a version of Harley Quinn. It's still unknown at the moment, though, if the movie will be a musical, like early reports suggested, and how the teaser pretty much kind of, I wouldn't say confirmed it, but maybe it was toying with us, knowing that it was out there that this movie might be a musical. So they may have just, done the teaser in a way that makes it seem like maybe it's going to be a musical, maybe not, but who knows. Production is expected to start soon because the Joker sequel does have a release date for October 4th, 2024. Joaquin Phoenix has, there's that picture of him holding the script. They got Lady Gaga in there, pretty much their two leads, and now they have Zazie Beetz potentially coming back. That'll be very interesting to kind of see how that works out. Another Joker movie, Zazie Beetz coming back. I talked about last week how I was just, I don't know how I feel about another Joker movie, but it's coming. Speaking of other movies that are coming back, and some surprising news, while talking to the Boo Crew podcast, which is a podcast run by Bloody Disgusting, producer Roy Lee pretty much has produced a lot of horror movies, the big ones being The Ring, the It movies, and the upcoming Barbarian movie, which is probably why he was on the podcast, not probably. It is the reason why he was on the podcast. He revealed that there are 3 new Strangers movies going into production next month, with, quote, another filmmaker people will know. So that's pretty big news considering we haven't heard anything about new Strangers movies coming. I mean, he's a producer on the movie, so he would obviously know. So I guess he's just been keeping it a secret, and he was probably waiting to just film all three and be like, "Hey, we got 3 new Strangers movies on the way." He didn't share, like I said, he didn't share any new details. Brian Bertino did the first movie, which, you know, shocked a lot of people and surprised a lot of people, and has a lot of people's, you know, home invasion horror movies lists. Johannes Roberts did the sequel to Strangers Prey at Night like 10 years later, 13 years, something along those lines, something ridiculously long, very much later, and very different from the first movie, but still pretty good in my opinion. I actually thoroughly enjoyed the Strangers Prey at Night, and I really liked what Johannes Roberts did with that. So there it was. But a day later, the same horror website that runs the Boo Crew podcast, Bloody Disgusting, learned that Rennie Harlin is directing one of those movies, if not all 3 movies. Now, Harlan is probably well known for his action movies like Die Hard 2, Cliffhanger, and The Long Kiss Goodnight, which is personally one of my favorites. But Harlan does have a history with horror. In fact, one of his first movies in Hollywood that he directed was A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master. He also directed Exorcist: The Beginning and Deep Blue Sea. So, yeah, this guy knows how to direct horror movies. He knows how to direct action movies. He's still working. He actually does. His last few movies have actually been, or last couple movies rather, have been movies that he's filmed in China. He's actually or overseas. I don't know if both of them were Chinese movies. I know one of them was a Chinese movie, but he's directed a bunch of movies like overseas too. So he's actively working, which I think is pretty cool. So if he actually ends up being one of the directors for the Strangers movies, if he ends up directing at least one of them or all 3 of them, I think they're in decent hands. You know, it's not like the Strangers property is like one of those, you know, it's not like a Halloween property or like a Friday the 13th or anything like that, which I know there was news on the Friday the 13th front. I'm not going to talk about it because I feel like there's still, like the rights, like a movie thing is still in limbo. So until that actually is officially announced, we're not going to talk about it, even though I'm talking about it right now. Strangers movies. I really liked the first one. I saw the first one with a buddy of mine at a movie theater on a packed Friday night. Like, that movie was packed. There was no empty seats in that movie theater. Like, I think we got like one of the last 2 seats in that theater. And it was a long drive home through like a wooded area, and we were wrecked. We were nervous going home. And then the second one came out, and I saw that with my brother and thoroughly enjoyed it. I didn't think I would enjoy it, but I thoroughly enjoyed Strangers Prey at Night. So I am looking forward to seeing what, you know, these movies bring. It says 3, so I am very interested in seeing how this plays out, especially considering how Strangers Prey at Night ended. I'm not going to ruin the ending, but considering how that ended, I'll be interested in kind of seeing what they do with this. Maybe they go back to their roots and they make it, you know, a home invasion movie instead of like a trailer park movie, because that's where the second one takes place. It takes place in a trailer park, basically. Not a trailer park, but like it was like this very small community. It wasn't a trailer park. I think originally when the sequel was first announced and they were going to make it, the script leaked and a big chunk of the movie took place in a trailer park. They ended up changing, obviously, the some of the scenes, but a lot of the stuff that was in that leaked script ended up in Strangers Prey at Night, but they ended up changing a lot. And one of the parts that they ended up changing was like this big sequence in a trailer park. So that was rather interesting. But we'll see what happens. No matter who's directing, I think they have a very big task in front of them, because the Strangers movies, very interesting. Because again, they started off as these home invasion movies, became this kind of like bigger slasher feel, and it'll be interesting if they continue with that front, or if they again go back to, you know, the home invasion slow burn kind of scares. It'll be interesting to see how they pull that off. But there you go. All right, moving on to the next movie news item. Tom Cruise, and writer, producer, director, and someone that Cruise has become very connected to, a filmmaker that he is probably going to be working with a lot more in the future, Christopher McQuarrie, are reportedly in the early stages of setting up 3 different projects. That's right. Not 1, not 2, 3 different projects together. And that is according to Deadline. The 2 have worked together on the last 2 Mission Impossible movies and the 2 that are still coming out. In fact, they're actually filming Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 2 at the moment, but their future looks to be promising as well. One of the projects is reportedly an original song and dance style musical, which is rather interesting. Not what I expected from Christopher McQuarrie or even Tom Cruise. The other is an original action film with franchise potential, and the other is something to do with Tom Cruise's Les Grossman character from Tropic Thunder. It's unclear how they're going to make that one work in particular, but if Tom Cruise wants to put on the fat suit and go under all that makeup again to play Les Grossman, one of the amazing parts of Tropic Thunder, one of my favorite roles he's been in. I'm game for it. Totally game. McQuarrie will write all 3 scripts with Cruise having some say in it, so we'll probably get some sort of story credit at the end of the day. At the moment, Cruise and McQuarrie do have a project besides Mission Impossible. They have a movie together with Doug Liman, which will involve them filming at the International Space Station, which we talked about. So yes, Tom Cruise is going to film a movie in space. Because, of course he is. 60-year-old man, Tom Cruise, is going to film a movie in space. Because he can, apparently. So they got that. And McQuarrie and Cruise, besides working on the Mission Impossible movies, of course, McQuarrie had a hand in writing Edge of Tomorrow, which, of course, Doug Liman ended up directing as well, and having some, I think he also had some stay in the script as well. They also did the first Jack Reacher movie. I don't think McQuarrie came back for the second one, but they did the first Jack Reacher movie. I'm trying to remember if they did American Made. I didn't write that down, but I think maybe McQuarrie had some hand in American Made as well, which was the movie where Tom Cruise plays the real-life pirate the real-life smuggler. I don't know why I confused smuggler and pirate. Playing the real-life smuggler who was smuggling drugs. So they have a very healthy relationship working together, and a very good relationship. I enjoyed the first Jack Reacher for what it was. It wasn't awesome, but I enjoyed it for what it was. And obviously, I've really liked the last 2 Mission Impossible movies. I'm really looking forward to Dead Reckoning because that trailer was awesome, and of course Edge of Tomorrow was very, very good. So I think Cruise and McQuarrie have a very good working relationship. I think they work well together, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with these next 3 movies, especially if one of them is a Les Grossman movie. Whether it's a standalone movie or whether he pops up in something, I'm totally game for that. I just want to see Tom Cruise and Les Grossman again. Really, I really, really do.
This is flaming dragon!
Okay, flaming dragon. Fuckface. First, take a big step back and literally fuck your own face! Now, I don't know what kind of pan-Pacific bullshit power play you're trying to pull here, but Asia Jack is my territory. So whatever you're thinking, you better think again. Otherwise, I'm gonna have to head down there, and I will rain down on a godly fucking firestorm upon you. You're gonna have to call the fucking United Nations and get a fucking binding resolution to keep me from fucking destroying you. I am talking scorched earth, motherfucker! I will massacre you! I will fuck you up!
All right, and let's talk about the big movie news items of the week, both of which are connected to Warner Bros. Discovery and DC Films. So after the surprising cancellation of Batgirl last week, the future of DC movies under Warner Bros. Discovery were pretty much up in the air, right? I mean, I think we can all agree with that. Yes, we have Black Adam and Shazam! Fury of the Gods coming out later this year, October and December, to be more precise. And Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, and somehow The Flash are set up for next year. The Flash, maybe. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But you never know. You never know. Like I said, we'll talk about Flash in a little bit. Anyway, following that news last week, the head of Warner Bros. Discovery, David Zaslav, during a meeting, one of their big meetings, said that the studio, quote, had a 10-year plan for the DC movies, which I mentioned on Twitter when that news dropped, was hard to get behind, especially after how they canceled Batgirl. Of all movies, they canceled Batgirl. Of course, they also canceled the Scooby-Doo movie that they've been working on, but obviously a lot of the focus was on Batgirl because it's a Batgirl movie, and some people were pretty excited for that. And I think people knew about the Scooby-Doo sequel, Holiday Haunt, but I think because it was an animated movie, no one really knew how far in progress that was. And apparently, again, last week we mentioned one of the writers, he said that it was about 95% complete. So anyway, I mentioned on Twitter that the studio Warner Brothers had done this before, where they have constantly mentioned, it feels like every 4 or 5 years, they mention that they have a 10-year plan. And a lot of that was originally what everyone knows. Everyone remembers that San Diego Comic-Con picture where it was Justice League, Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, Suicide Squad, Aquaman, Wonder Woman, the over-delayed Flash movie originally, and then the canceled and now never going to be released Cyborg movie, which will probably not happen because of the whole Ray Fisher thing they had with Warner Brothers, and the Green Lantern movie, which they ended up turning into a TV series, which will come out at some point because it doesn't feel like it's coming out at all. It says that they're still working on it, but who knows? And now that they have almost pretty much publicly said that they are steering away from the Snyderverse movies and want to move somewhere else, or as they like to call it, a reset. Their wording, actual wording they said they're doing a reset of the DC movies. We're now finding out little things about the DC projects that were already announced during the old regime, rather. But considering what they are now okay with doing, let's not get too excited on these movies. So, first of all, Blue Beetle, which another movie like Batgirl has already finished filming, and that's set for a release next year as well, August 16th to be more precise. That's still moving forward. It's still happening. They're still planning for the release of that. And that movie barely saved itself too, I think, because that movie was originally going to be an HBO Max movie before they decided, you know what, we're going to release it in theaters instead. So Blue Beetle barely by the skin of its teeth, at least originally, saved itself. It's still not in the clear, obviously. The Black Canary movie is also apparently still in the works as well. That character, of course, debuted in Birds of Prey, played by Jurnee Smollett, and she will return for the spin-off, although not much is known from that movie. We do know that Misha Green, who worked on Lovecraft Country, she's writing the script for it, and her and Smollett actually have a history. Obviously, Smollett was a part of Lovecraft Country, and she was also in the TV drama that Misha Green also worked on, Underground, which I've heard nothing but great things about. Haven't watched it, but if you want to go check that out. But there you go. But Batgirl wasn't the only thing that was canceled, according to The Hollywood Reporter, which reported on all of this, by the way. All this that we're talking about right now, this movie news item, and then the Flash movie news item that we'll talk about in a little bit, they're the ones that are reporting all of this. Walter Hamada, the DC Films president, at least of right now, his plan was eventually for the DC Extended Universe to do a movie adaptation of Crisis of Infinite Earths. That is apparently no longer happening. Maybe. Who knows? We don't know what's going on. The storyline, for those who don't know, Crisis of Infinite Earths, in the comics, acted pretty much like a significant reboot of the entire comic book universe. And they've done more than one of these. They've had heroes and villains come across the multiverse that band together to fight off an even bigger villain who threatens to destroy every universe. And I'm just giving you the basis of the story in case they actually do end up doing a version of this, or in case, you're curious and you want to go read it yourselves. It's a very good comic. It's a very good comic if you want to go check it out. Now, in the comics, like I said, it acted as a reboot. And apparently the plan with doing Crisis on Infinite Earths was for the movies, rather, I'm losing my phrasing here, for the movies was to fix any potential and any outright production problems and plot holes that the movies had that they can just fix with, this. Which is a smart move on Hamada's part. And like I mentioned, it may still happen, it may not happen anymore, we don't know. Especially because Hamada is on his way out, which is why I said DC president for right now. Because when the Batgirl movie was canceled, we also learned that an unannounced Supergirl movie was in the works. That was no longer happening. And then earlier this year, the Wonder Twins movie was canceled. Only after it was announced this year that a Wonder Twins movie was going to happen, they casted the two Wonder Twins, and then they canceled the movie literally what felt like a few weeks later. So all these movies around him were getting canceled or canned or were being stunted because of the new regime that was coming in. So Hamada was reportedly going to quit after all the cancellations. He was going to quit last week, but Warner Bros. Discovery convinced him to stay until October for the release of Black Adam. Now, Hamada, to his credit, if you want to call it that, for DC, he came into power in DC Films in 2018, and his job was basically to try and reconstruct the film universe to the best that he could after Justice League. That was his job. That's what he was hired to do. That's when he came into power. And, whether or not, he did a good job at that is up to you. There's certain things that he did right, certain things he did wrong, certain things he could have worked on, maybe certain things that if it wasn't for all these regime changes under Warner Brothers, he probably could have fixed. And he probably could have done a good job. So Hamada's on his way out. And now this new guy, David Zaslav, the CEO of Warner Brothers Discovery, is just making it very more difficult for DC Films to get anything, underway on the bottom end. So that was the first bit of news. And the other bit of news was that, they had the 10-year plan. They also are going to do away with the 45-day theater window, which means that, a lot of the time, a movie for Warner Bros., when it came out in theaters, 45 days after that, it would go onto the streaming service. Apparently now it's going to be a film-by-film basis thing. So it's not going to be... So if a movie's doing really well in theaters, they're probably going to keep it in theaters, and they're going to keep it off the streaming service for as long as possible. But if a movie's not doing so hot, maybe they'll drop it on the streaming service and see what happens from there. Maybe, maybe not. Because obviously David Zaslav has made it very apparent that he doesn't believe in streaming services. But that was the first part. So that was all the first part. And then It literally feels like every day we're getting some sort of report. Again, the Hollywood Reporter had even more to report. And this is the second part of this story. This time about The Flash and Ezra Miller, who was back in the news, regular news, not just movie news, regular news, for like burglary or something along those lines. He's being charged in Vermont for a crime or something. I don't know. It feels like every day is something new with him. So anyway, Hollywood Reporter reports that Warner Bros. Discovery is reportedly weighing their options on what to do with The Flash. And apparently they have come down to three options that they can do. Option number 1, they try to convince Miller to publicly say that he needs help and to seek help and explain his, quote, erratic behavior. And while doing this, also do limited press for the movie. So that's option number 1. Option number 2, Miller doesn't do any of that, which is what he's doing now. He doesn't do any press whatsoever, and they recast the role of Barry Allen / The Flash for future projects. Option number 3, and this is the option where a lot of people have been saying you should do this, especially considering what you have done. Option number 3, they decide to entirely kill the project and not release it, meaning that's over $200 million down the drain. And in case you're wondering why not just reshoot the movie, they can't, because Miller plays multiple versions of Barry Allen and the Flash in the movie in almost every scene. So that could be even more expensive, and they basically be redoing the whole movie, which in theory sounds obviously like the thing you should do. But in reality, considering the movie is already $200 million, I don't think you want to do that again. So The Flash has been in the works for some time now. Miller has been cast as Barry Allen, The Flash, since 2014 and made cameos in Batman v Superman and obviously Suicide Squad before finally making his first full appearance as the character in Justice League. And then that's when we slowly started learning things about him. Now, The Flash, however, is reportedly a key film for the studio and is expected to chart a new course for the DC Extended Universe, as it's pretty much taking the Flashpoint story arc. At least that's kind of what it feels like, and it seems like that it is the Flashpoint story arc, which does change things in the comic universe as well. And also, reportedly, the movie's been testing very well despite Miller's legal problems. And despite all of Ezra Miller's continuing legal problems, David Zaslav has said, and this is the thing that really just made all of us, collectively roll our eyes, quote, "All is good in Flashland." No, it's not. And is, I don't know why I yelled, is very determined to get movies in theaters, like I mentioned, making DC Films event movies that can only be seen in theaters and not streaming, hence the cancellation of Batgirl. He's not a fan of streaming. Which now, with all of this, you're telling me that you're willing to deal with the very public outcry of people and fans who are telling you to cancel, not release, what have you, the Flash movie. And you're willing to back this movie with a toxic leading man who, if you put in front of a camera to promote your movie, even if it is a controlled environment, because let's face it, Warner Bros. Discovery is going to want to heavily control that an interview, whatever interview it is, with Miller. And worst case scenario, he decides to make it all about himself in the wrong way and could potentially damage the image of the movie and the studio that have very, very, very heavily backed this movie. You're going to be okay with that? Really? You're also pretty much saying that this $200 million movie, I want to emphasize this, this $200 million movie is worth more with a toxic and problematic leading man than a Batgirl movie that cost $90 million that was going to go to your streaming service, that even if it was as bad as people were saying it was, which I don't believe that, you could bury it and make it hard to find on your said streaming service. But that Flash movie, you're saying that movie is 1,000 times better than a street-level female superhero movie. A female superhero movie that was led by a person of color, directed by people of color. That could have, and I say this very strongly, could have given you a leg up over your direct competitor, which is Marvel. You're saying the Flash movie is much more worth that than Batgirl. And I know there's people out there like, oh, no one cares about, I said this last week, no one cares about the Batgirl movie. Shut up. There are people that care about the Batgirl movie. Was it good? And again, this is me saying it without any footage. I was not jumping for joy for a Batgirl movie, but I was excited for it because it's a Batgirl movie. Never seen Batgirl on the big screen in her own solo movie, which would have been really cool. And people have been coming out of the woodwork to stand up for the directors of Batgirl, to stand up for Leslie Grace, to stand up for everyone that worked on that project. A lot of them, of course, calling out the absurdity of them canceling Batgirl the way they did, and for a tax break of all things. Kevin Smith, obviously a very big comic book fan, has worked with DC in the past, has worked with Warner Brothers in the past, very vocal about it. And the issue of race also comes up. Obviously Leslie Grace, Latina. The directors themselves, again, people of color. We don't want to make it a race issue, but Ezra Miller, white. Just saying. Anyway, I mentioned last week, and I will say it again, and I will continue to say this until the Flash movie comes out. Any hype I had for the Flash has been wiped away after Ezra Miller's continuing problems. No, Ezra Miller is not the first problematic actor in Hollywood who has been a part of a big movie franchise. Of course not. Of course he's not. And he will not be the last. But that, especially in the time that we live in now, is going to affect your box office. It's going to affect your fans. It's going to affect the viewing experience. And for me, even if this movie is good, great even, having Miller there, on top of the continuing production delays that this movie has had over the years, it's going to affect my viewing experience. Seeing Michael Keaton back as Bruce Wayne Batman, awesome. That is my childhood right there. Seeing a Latina Supergirl played by Sasha Calle, awesome. Could have had a Latina Batgirl like I just mentioned, but you wanted a tax write-off instead. Ben Affleck back as Bruce Wayne / Batman again. Great. Awesome. Love Batfleck. Mentioned it last week and I'll mention it again. And I will continue to mention it. But this movie will forever be tarnished by Ezra Miller's actions and what it did to any DC property that was coming out or is being worked on HBO Max that has gotten canceled or probably will get canceled. Now, obviously, I don't want anybody's work to go unseen. There are thousands of people that work on a movie, from pre-production to post-production, and they work their asses off, and their work should be shown off, good or bad. It should be shown because they take time away from their families to work on this movie. But if you, and now I'm speaking directly to David Zaslav, or anybody of power at Warner Bros. Discovery, or anyone who actually has any sort of positive feelings toward them, but this is more directed toward them in the studio. If you want to set your regime at the studio the way it is right now, and the way you want it to, you cannot play favorites. If you're willing to cancel a movie that has already finished filming, and is in post-production, and you saw it, and it's like, it's not fitting my vision because it's not where I want to go. It's not going to make me any money at the end of the day. Then you know what you have to do with The Flash. Whether it's good or not. Whether it sets the rest of the DC universe in motion. Will it suck for everyone that has worked on that movie? Yes. Will it suck for us who wanted to see Michael Keaton back as Batman? Yes. See Sasha Calle as Supergirl? Yes. But if it's that, or letting Ezra Miller, if he decides to go with option 1, even option 2, if he does no press whatsoever, that is a looming cloud that you have over the actor's heads, over the director's head, over everyone else that worked on that movie, over the movie itself. That is a looming cloud that is over your movie, that is going to overshadow your movie no matter what. And him not being there, and us knowing all the issues that he has, that is going to affect the movie. And you know it is. But you're too proud because you want to just make big spectacle movies. You're too proud to admit that maybe the Flash movie, even if it's good, is going to cost us in the end. You really think the Flash movie is going to make back its budget opening weekend? It doesn't matter if it has all that stuff in it. Everything look, you can say that the droves of the fans, of the hardcore fans, are going to go watch the Flash movie. Of course we are. Of course they are. But even if you get every single fan, even if you sell out every single show, $200 million, maybe even more, with marketing and no matter how much marketing you do after this, yeah, you could probably make back your budget. You could probably make back the budget for the Flash movie with box office returns. But will it be the first month? Will it be the first couple weeks? How long is it going to take for you to make back that money? Because if you don't make back that money, the Flash movie, for all intents and purposes, is a failure. We'll see. Flash movie currently has a release date for June 23rd. Will it come out? Who knows? We'll see. All right, that's all the movie news I have for you guys. Let us move on to the movies that are coming out in streaming and theaters for all your viewing pleasures.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
All right, so the first movie that we have for streaming, I think the only movie. Nope, that's not right. Just had to scroll down my timeline here. The first movie we have on streaming is on Paramount Plus. It's called Secret Headquarters. While hanging out after school, Charlie and his friends discover the headquarters of the world's most powerful superhero hidden beneath his home. When villains attack, they must team up to defend the headquarters and save the world. The movie stars Walker Scobell. He plays Charlie, and his father is played by Owen Wilson, who is the powerful superhero. Jesse Williams and Michael Pena also star. It's like Michael Pena is the main bad guy in the movie. We talked about this when the trailer first came out. It looks pretty cool. It's a Paramount Plus movie. It's a family movie. Paramount Plus is, doubling down on their movies. It seems like every month or so, it looks like they're releasing a big movie. So this continues that trend, and we'll see what happens with that. But this looks pretty. It looks like a good family. The next streaming movie is Day Shift. This is the movie on Netflix. A hardworking blue-collar dad who just wants to provide a good life for his quick-witted 8-year-old daughter, which is played by Jamie Foxx, the dad, anyway, not the 8-year-old daughter. His mundane San Fernando Valley pole cleaning job is actually a front for his real source of income, which is hunting and killing vampires. Like I mentioned, Jamie Foxx plays the father in this movie. Dave Franco's also in here. Megan Good, Scott Adkins, and Snoop Dogg are in the movie. This movie is co-written by Shay Hayden, who wrote the John Wick movies, at least the first 3 John Wick movies, and is the directorial debut of stunt director, choreographer, and stunt man J.J. Perry. This is pretty cool, but I've talked a lot about Day Shift since it's come out, and I'm still excited for this movie. So I'm looking forward to it. Big fan of J.J. Perry, big fan of the way this movie looks, the way it kind of will feel. It's kind of like an action comedy, kind of horror kind of thing. So I'm looking forward to it. Nothing but good things. In theaters, Bodies is getting an expansion release. We talked about it last week. That's the new A24 movie. It's getting an expansion release. I mentioned last week it was getting a limited release and then expanding this week. So there you go. E.T. is getting an IMAX re-release. This is just one of the 2 Steven Spielberg movies that is getting an IMAX re-release. Jaws will be another one that's getting a re-release sometime later this year, but E.T. is getting the first one. So if you're an IMAX and you see E.T., no, your eyes are not deceiving you. That is the re-release for that. The next movie, Mac and Rita. This is a wide release. This movie kind of came out of nowhere. I didn't know this movie was coming out until I started seeing TV commercials. So it is coming out. It's called Mac and Rita. 30-year-old writer spends a wild weekend at Palm Springs and wakes up to find that she has magically transformed into her 70-year-old self. 70-year-old self is played by Diane Keaton. I don't know. Like I mentioned, I didn't know this movie was a thing until I saw the TV commercials this week. So there you go if you want to go check that out. The other quote-unquote wide release this week is Fall. We briefly talked about this when the trailer came out. 2 best friends, Becky and Hunter, find themselves on top of a 20,000-foot radio tower in the middle of nowhere. The film stars Grace Fulton from Shazam. She plays the older version of the siblings when they transform. She was also the older girl in Annabelle Creations as well. Virginia Gardner is the other girl in the movie. She played Vicky in the 2018 Halloween movie. The babysitter that the blonde friend, basically, the one that we all liked. And when she unfortunately passes away or gets killed rather by Michael, we were like, oh, that sucks. And then Jeffrey Dean Morgan is in the movie. I think he's playing. He's definitely not. I don't think he is playing one of the fathers to the character, to Grace Fulton's character. Actually, this movie looks interesting. It's one of those survival movies. It's kind of this trend where it's 2 people or it's a group of people and they're stuck somewhere. And it's a real recent trend of these movies happening where it's it's 1 person or 2 people and they're stuck somewhere with very limited supplies or no supplies whatsoever, and they just gotta find a way to get out of whatever situation it is. And this is one of those movies. In this case, it's a 2,000-foot tower in the middle of nowhere, basically a desert, and their ladder breaks. That goes down, breaks, and they're stuck up there with no cell phone reception, and they don't know what to do. So it's very interesting to see how this movie turns out. But there you go. That's Fall for you guys. So again, coming out in theaters, Fall, Mac and Rita, and Bodies. E.T. is also getting a IMAX re-release. It's not on every IMAX screen, so if you just be aware of that. I think some IMAX screens are still showing Bullet Train, which came out last week. And streaming Day Shift on Netflix and Secret Headquarters on Paramount Plus. That is it. Thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast this week. I very much appreciate it. I always appreciate it, no matter where you're listening, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, or Anchor. Very much appreciate you guys tuning in to the podcast. Let me know what you guys thought of the podcast this week. What was your news item that you really want to talk about? If you want to hit me up and talk about stuff, whether it's new movies out this weekend or just anything in general, movie related or not, The social medias for the social medias for the podcast are up there, Twitter and Instagram included, and also my personal Twitter and Instagram as well. And just, all the trailers are linked down there as well. And yeah, so thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast this week. Again, I always appreciate it. You guys are great. Be sure to be good people. Continue to stay safe out there. And as always, go watch some movies.
Whoop whoop! Yeah! Give it up! Movies!